Hi there, I'm Michael Bovee with Consumer Recovery Network. Thanks for tuning in to DebtBytes, our YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about an R9. Sometimes people are out there looking for financing and they find out that they've got an R9 from the lender, the loan officer, the dealership, whatever it is. And they're like, what the crap is that? Well, let's talk about the R scale in general. It runs from R1 to R9. R stands for revolving. I has a scale, which is for an installment type of loan. So an R is a revolving account, and an R9 is the worst of the worst. It is the fact that you didn't pay, and you didn't pay long enough for basically the creditor to abandon trying to collect the debt. In other words, they charged it off, which is an accounting principle. They didn't really abandon the debt. It's still collectible. They still try and collect. They still use collection agencies. But it shows up as an R9 on your credit report. What can you do about these Rs, okay? Or more specifically, an R9. You can improve your situation by resolving unpaid debt, okay? So you can actually impact what an R9 is showing as. Once you resolve it, it goes to kind of the middle of the road in R5. It's basically a paid collection, okay? An R scale exists from 1 through 9. So there's 1, R2, R3, R4, and so on. And R1 means you pay on time all the time. Never had a problem, okay? And R2 might mean that you were late once, okay? That's a 30-day late pay. And the severity goes up from there all the way to when you haven't paid for something along the lines of 6 or 7 months in order to get the R9. You can have an R9 and have it still be updated to show an R5 and resolved and settled, even if you've been sued and there's a judgment against you. So you can get the judgment on your credit report shown as satisfied or paid because it's on the public record section, which is double damage, right? You want to avoid ever being sued and getting a judgment because not only now do you have the R9, but you have a judgment on your credit report that's impairing you even more. Other than that, that's the worst that a R is going to hurt your ability to get approved for credit in the future. So when you've got a 30-day, 60-day late pay, you've got an R2 or R3, these are like one-off scenarios usually where, okay, I was late once for whatever reason and that stays there, right? Any negative item, a 30-day, 60-day late pay is going to be on your credit report for up to 7 years. But you caught it back up and it's no longer an R anything, you're back to R1. I hope that makes sense. It's when you get past the point where you hit that R9 that you're not going to be able to reverse anything other than through resolving the debt. And I do not mean making payments. You can't get an R9 back to an R2 or an R1 really ever. And making payment plans and surviving those payments for, let's say you make 6 months of on-time payments, isn't going to reverse that. It's only once you pay it off. And because the damage is already done to your credit, an R9, and you're only going to really ever be able to get it back to an R5, I'm a big fan of settling for as little as you can to save as much as you can. Because one, something happened in your finances, you're just bouncing back, you need the money more than the bank. And two is that you can't undo or unring that bell, undo the damage that was created. So get as good as you can get by settling, same result, get that R5. So because we're talking about it, you also need to know that when you have an installment loan, the I's, then it's kind of the same scenario, but when there's an installment loan on something like your car or on your home, these are secured items. So if you don't pay on those, they get taken from you. Eventually, if you don't pay your car long enough, it gets repossessed most of the time. Eventually, if you're not paying on your home loan, it gets repossessed or foreclosed upon most of the time. And it doesn't take all that long, less than a year, certainly for most people for homes, and just a month or 3 on a car loan. So when you're late on these installment contracts, they can have the somewhat same effect on your credit as if you had a car loan, 5-year loan, and you went in 2 years paying on time all the time, and then suddenly you missed a payment or 2. So now you've got an I2, I3. You were late on your car note, or you caught it back up, and no big deal. And so it's pays on time all the time from there. That's really not impairing you that much. Same thing on your mortgage if you were late once or twice during the life of the loan, or at least as long as you've had it, say like the last 5 years. there's not much to do about that, nor would you really want to do much about it. It just is what it is, and it's really not holding you back. However, if you've got a repossession, that's the end of an I scale on a car note. If you've got a foreclosure, that's showing up on your credit and impairing you for years to come. So if you can avoid those situations, that's great. They're not going to impair you too long, but if you've had those things show up on your credit, there's not much you're going to be able to undo about the fact that those happened, but you can settle the deficiency balance on a repossession. We've got videos on that topic. You can deal with foreclosures and any residual HELOC debt that you might have had with that, or a second, if it didn't get fully paid. You can deal with those things and negotiate those debts so that you can move on with other financial goals too after the fact. See you on the next video.